Okay, this is Steph Diorio, who's going to be our next speaker. And Steph's the local history librarian and archivist at Hoboken Public Library. She's been an autistic self-advocate for 10 years since her diagnosis in July 2009. In addition to her work advocating through her various archival and library posts, she's also the founder of the Autistic Gaming Initiative, an organization of autistic gamers who do monthly live streams for autistic-run charities and organizations and to promote further acceptance of autistic people in the gaming community and at large. Her academic areas of research include the history of comedy, with an emphasis on British comedy in the 60s and anything in the 19th century, and the long 19th century, particularly the Napoleonic Wars, the American Civil War, and World War I. She spends her spare time writing and drawing comics and shares her life with an abnormally large cat.
Got what a good writer I was. Jeez. Wrote a good bio about myself. Good job, me. Okay. I wrote that months ago and forgot what I wrote. So this talk actually is a modified version of a talk I did at Hoboken Public Library, attended by a grand total of 4 patrons, 2 of whom were my parents. So we'll see how this is a nicer crowd, I think, so far. So as my profile mentioned, I work at the Hoboken Public Library in Hoboken, New Jersey. I'm right across the river from New York City. So slightly more urban perspective, I think. So we'll get started. Okay, that's Murphy. Murphy is 22 pounds and all of just a ton of love, and he's great. I actually, if you want to know anything about, if you want to basically, this is a great explanation of who I am as a person. I paid for my 10th anniversary / 30th birthday, my 10th anniversary of owning this cat and me turning 30, I paid $1,000 to do a photo shoot with my cat. And which was to celebrate that I had a full-time job with benefits and could afford to just be frivolous every so often. And my parents agreed to pay for half of it as my birthday present, because now I'm kind of old. You know, I don't know how much more. I'm at the point where it's like, what did my parents buy for me? I'm 30, so they paid for half of it. So anyway. There we go. Hey, I'm Steph and I'm from New Jersey. If you can't tell by my annoying accent, I am not from around here. I enjoy your Portillo's. Very good. I had it sent to my hotel room last night. It's great. It's fantastic. So yeah, let's see. So I was diagnosed as autistic in 2009. At the time, the diagnosis was called Asperger's syndrome. They kind of merged the DSM into a big mishmash. So I am autistic. My official diagnosis papers say Asperger's with OCD and social anxiety on them, which is a very unpleasant experience overall. But the autism part's good. It's the other stuff. So I am the local history librarian / archivist at Hoboken Public Library, birthplace of baseball. Thank you. We have there. So my job is I maintain this collection of all sorts of really cool things. We have some old books, obviously, we're a library. Some ledgers that actually contain the registers of all our patrons in the early 20th century with their addresses and names, which is really cool. We're having those restored at the Conservation Center for Historic Art and Artifacts in Philadelphia. I pick a couple up each month, and the library pays for it, which is amazing because funding is so hard to get, and they're actually giving me money to do stuff, which is cool. We also have photo collections, vertical files. We have some oral history that we did in conjunction with the Hoboken Historical Museum. We have these really cool old atlases that I love to work with, and we have a magic lantern, which is a device originally actually developed by, believe it or not, Christian Huygens in the 17th century. The technology evolved, and it basically became like a precursor to the modern slideshow. So in the 19th century, they were actually used as a sort of form of entertainment. So it's kind of like, my supervisor calls it the Victorian Oculus, and she's not really wrong. So that's, and of course we have a ton of Sinatra stuff because we're Hoboken. Like we have a Sinatra writing reference collection. So yeah, so that's kind of neat. So working in a public library is actually a really good opportunity for me to self-advocate, despite the fact that I am an archivist and like to kind of be the weird history gremlin that like hides in the back. Sometimes they bring me out for tech support. Like I don't know if any of you have seen the British show, The IT Crowd. Okay, so you know Noel Fielding's character, the goth that they like hide in the basement. That's me. And they just kind of, when there's something wrong with the computers and like my older staff members can't figure it out, they just kind of bring me out of the like the closet, and they're just kind of like, okay, fix. Yeah, and then I just kind of go and retreat back to the history collection. I also work the night shift, so I spend the evenings on the reference desk, which is nice because it's quieter, and I can really work in depth with my patrons' issues. I have more time that I can afford to them when I'm on the reference desk, as opposed to during the day when it's very frantic. So it's actually really nice to be able to actually help. And I every so often I'll have a patron who is autistic or has an autistic family member, and I can just jump right in on that. So, self-advocacy. Let's actually get into the nitty-gritty here. So it's basically just standing up for yourself and your rights as a human being to exist. Anyone can self-advocate, like literally saying, hey, Mom, can we go to McDonald's, is self-advocating if you want McDonald's. And then, you know, so that is actually, like anytime you are standing up for what you believe and what you want, it is actually technically self-advocacy. That's a very simple definition. So the disability community is traditionally disenfranchised, so it has a much more special meaning when you apply self-advocacy as a term to us. So we have a lot of issues that we face when we stand up and fight for disability rights. So I'm going to go through a few of those. Accessibility is the most obvious one. I mean, anyone who's seen a building that you can't get into if you have a wheelchair, you know, that's obviously an ADA violation. My library even has an elevator. Our building was built and finished in 1897, but we're ADA compliant because we put in the elevator. So we have accessibility is definitely a big thing, and that doesn't just go to physical disabilities. For example, everyone here started. I heard all the autistic people kind of start being like, ugh, when they turned the lights on a few minutes ago. Light is sometimes not really a thing that we like. If it's too strong, you know, or something's too loud. We're doing construction in our building right now. We're restoring the second floor, restoring the ceilings. And the other day, it was so loud that I actually had to put on my noise-canceling headphones at the reference desk so I could talk to patrons because I couldn't hear otherwise. I couldn't focus. It was just too much. This is a big one, being infantilized or talked down to. A lot of people, you'll notice this with Down syndrome and intellectual disability a lot. People think that you are not as competent as you actually are, or that you don't have, you know, the wherewithal to talk like an adult. And so they will talk to you like you're a child. In my case, it's usually that everyone looks at me and thinks I'm actually a 12-year-old because I look like one. But in a lot of cases, people will just say, oh, they're disabled, so that means that they don't have the capacity to talk like an adult, but obviously, as some of the information in Erin's slides show there, prove that's not true at all. They can learn on the same level. So if you're talking down to them, that's not going to really help your case. They're going to feel like, oh, this is perfect. Sure, geez, like they're treating me like a kid. Please don't do that. It's really not cool. Like, again, being taken seriously goes along with that. I mean, if you're on the internet, you probably see people use autism as an insult. And it's not an insult. It's just who I am, and you know, a lot of the time, things like autism seem like a joke to some people, or you know, other disabilities. We're kind of considered, you know, an easy target. And then when we do try to speak up for ourselves, people laugh us off. This is a big one. A lot of the time, people claim that they're experts because their cousin's sister, second aunt once removed, knows somebody who might be autistic. You know, it's one of those kinds of things. And you know, then they'll be like, "Oh, I know everything. I'm so smart. I know everything about autism because this person that I'm only tangentially related to has this disorder." And it's like, first off, you use the word disorder, so I'm already a little off, because I don't call it that. But they'll just go on and on and on about it, and then you just go to them, so what's your, like, how do you know? And I'm like, well, I'm actually autistic, so everything you said is wrong, and I'm going to punch you now. And they just kind of, they'll talk over you. A lot of these people think that they know better than the actual people in question who are being affected by the policies, and really the true experts are the people who are being affected by the policies. I mean, you wouldn't, well, I was going to say they kind of did in Alabama. They kind of ignored the actual, people with actual uteruses, and it was a bunch of old white men who decided to say, hey, this is how this works. No. I was going to say, you wouldn't do that, but no, they did. They did it. So, so my personal self-advocacy work. So I've been blogging about being autistic since about 2010. My blog is, title reflects the name of my old diagnosis. It says it's Asperger's Illustrated. I'll give you guys a link at the end of this presentation. I call it Asperger's Illustrated because I draw cartoons. And the blog I was originally drawing cartoons to go with a lot of the posts, and then I got busy because grad school happened. So that's that blog is where I post a lot of my more serious autism academic style writing and things, and also just life experiences. The Autistic Gaming Initiative is turning 2 years old in a couple weeks. Yay! I have actually one of my fellow streamers, Alyssa, back there. She's one of my streamers. Hey. So the Autistic Gaming Initiative is a community of autistic gamers. We have a Discord account, like Discord server. You can come hang out with us. It's actually a safe place for autistic people who like video games, who just kind of hang out online, chat, make friends, find gaming buddies, etc. Yep. And once a month we do streams, live streams, and the goal is to get people to donate to, or at least pay attention to, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and Autism Women and Non-Binary Network, which are two awesome organizations run actually by and for autistic people, because we like to kind of, center the autistic voice in the discussion. So it's kind of a, so that's what we've been doing. I've been doing that for 2 years. I last year represented us at the convention Too Many Games just outside Philadelphia. We had a table, people came over, it was pretty cool. So that's a thing that I do, because video games are kind of one of my, I spend way too much time playing Splatoon, and I'm kind of embarrassed about how many hours I've sunk into the Squid Game. So again, speaking at conferences, aka here, I spoke here last year. I loved it so much I wanted to do it again. So, because you guys told me I was funny, and that meant I liked it. So I came back, and I'm doing this now. So speaking at conferences it's kind of new. I'm not exactly on the level of like Kerry Magro, who's also out of Hoboken and spoke last year. He was in Egypt a couple of months ago. I was extremely jealous, and because I've always wanted to go to Egypt, and so but I do this. It's good. This is probably the one I do most often, actually, is just supporting other autistic people and amplifying their voices. Really easy to do if you have a social media account. If you see a blog post or a video or something made by an autistic person, just share it. Go right ahead. Just like put it out there. It's really cool, really easy. I love getting that diversity of voices out there into the blogosphere and all that. And then just discussing being autistic with the people around me is huge. My coworkers have learned a lot just from working with me over the past year in Hoboken. And they've kind of adjusted certain things, and they've made changes in their lives and in library things to kind of, work with that. It's great. So getting started with self-advocacy is really not that hard. You just got to take like one first step, and then you can start moving in. My case, I started blogging first. Mostly, not many people were reading that. It was just kind of me being like, I want to write something kind of public, but I don't, really want to publish a book right now. I'm in undergrad, and I am writing a thesis, and I'm very tired. And because I was too busy writing about ironclad rams in the American Civil War, I just started to blog because I didn't have time to do anything bigger than that. Anything, though, that gets your voice out there goes. I know there's some folks who draw comics, some people who make films, some people who do blogs, which is a video blog where you talk on YouTube. There's a lot of great channels on YouTube that are amazing. sometimes you can just, send a tweet. It's great. So autistic-led organizations are huge. The two biggest, most notable ones are the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network. Both are really, really great. I know people at both organizations, and I've worked with them, and it's pretty rad. If you want to really center autistic voices in your discussion on how to make things better for autistic people, these two organizations are a really good place to start, and just get some resources, get your bearings. They are really helpful for that. Making autistic friends is a big deal. The amount of things that my friends have learned just by tolerating me for the past 15 years now is great. They kind of have a sense of how my brain functions just because they are around me more than I'm surprised that people want to be around me a lot of the time, but it's huge. Just knowing autistic people talking to us, it really makes a big difference because then you start to see us as people and not some kind of statistics on a page or any of that. Big one. Reach out to autistics from minority groups. I'm really, really tired of every media depiction of autism being a cisgender white boy. Can we stop that? Please. The big thing for starters, women get diagnosed later, non-white people get diagnosed later, and I threw cisgender in there because a large portion of the autistic community is actually transgender and non-binary. You'd be surprised, and I think a lot. They're not sure why. I think a lot of it may have to do with the fact that autistic people just don't really conform to societal molds anyway. So it's gender anyway at this point. So let's see. So some good ways to help achieve acceptance. Let's go through these. So as I said, blogging or starting a YouTube channel, really big. Or you can create a community like I did with based around an interest. The Autistic Gaming Initiative is great because everyone has this common ground of they're autistic and they like video games, but it's still very broad, and so you can kind of form your own little subgroups and make friends in there. So it's been really great. Your unique autistic voice is highly valuable to the discussion because only you have lived your life. I can't stress how important that is. Only you have had the very specific experiences in your life that have shaped you into who you are now. So if you just think, oh, I'm just another, what's one more? No, one more is always needed. You can always have more. That also applies to your annual salary, by the way. Sharing, as I said before, again, sharing other autistic people's content. When I did the original draft of this, I put a little subnote, it's basically every time someone shares my art, I am so happy. So even if it's just hey, this is my friend, she's autistic and she draws, and I want people to look at her art, so I'm retweeting it. That is good. That means so much. I mean, anytime someone's yes, your art's good, can I share it with, as long as I give you credit, I'll be yeah, credit me. As long as you credit me, please put my art out there and say yeah, and especially if it's, one of my blog posts, I'm so happy when someone shares my blog post. I'm really, really happy if somebody links other people to the Autistic Gaming Initiative because it usually means we're getting more members, which is good and bad because I'm one of maybe 3 mods and we have over 100 members now. And it's a little overwhelming, but big one. Join autistic groups on social media. I was floundering at the beginning when I got my diagnosis because the predominant narrative in society was still that I was bad and broken and, wouldn't amount to much. And I found self-advocacy through autism groups on social media, through Twitter and Facebook and other sources of, of social media. And we were able to share our blog posts, share our discussions, ask each other questions. It's just been it's a great way to help each other out and just kind of build that community together, get all those resources. A lot of people will tell you that, those young people, they look too much at their phones, or, they're not gonna make any friends. No, look, if you're autistic, this is the best way to make friends. Because you don't have to, you can just cut to the chase. You don't have to do the small talk thing. It's kind of like living in Finland, like you just get right to it. And you just kind of go right in. Like the Finns don't do small talk. Finland is like autistic paradise. They don't do small talk, they just get right down to it. And nobody talks to you unless like they absolutely need to tell you something. So like you don't have to worry about strangers like having a conversation with you at the bus stop or anything. Finns just don't do that. It's fantastic. The only downside is that it's like really cold, but the winter is the downside. But but yeah, again, autistic groups on social media are perfect. You can get right down to what you need to business. You get your straight, direct, no subtext answers. It's wonderful. Big one, don't be so hard on yourself. I was terrible at this. I was picked on really badly growing up, which is probably why I am now constantly making jokes as a form of like some kind of, I don't know. But I make fun of myself so that no one else can. Because I was bullied very badly in school, and so I actually ended up being very hard on myself for a while. I actually was especially right after being diagnosed, I actually was beating myself up a lot and being like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, Z. Once I started coming to terms with and accepting, like, oh no, this is just who I am, and it's okay. There are people in my life who love me, and things got a lot easier. It was kind of amazing, but it took me a while to get there. And I had a good therapist who helped me walk through it. So again, allowing yourself to be autistic can go a long way. Masking is exhausting. I don't like pretending to be someone I'm not, and at some jobs I've had to do that. Luckily at Hoboken I don't really have to, because Hoboken is like a weird community of like filled with weird artists, and I'm also a weird artist, so people don't really think much of it. But just allowing yourself to be autistic and accepting, like, hey, I'm not doing this because I'm bad or I'm flawed, I'm a failure. I'm doing this because I'm autistic. It changes your entire way of thinking. You may have to tell it to yourself a lot until it gets in there, but definitely a thing. So speaking up to change the culture around you, big thing to do. So since taking my job in Hoboken, I've added a valuable autistic voice to the discussion. Last year, when I started working there about a year ago, they had their display. It had puzzle pieces all over the place. This year, it did not, because I said that a lot of autistic people have rejected that as a symbol and have moved on to the infinity symbol, and it didn't have that. And most of the books in the display this year, which I picked, were all written by autistic authors. And then there was Neurotracks by Steve Silverman, because I think it's pretty good. One of the few non-autistic authors I included, because it's just really a very good comprehensive history. So here's some of the things I've explained. Preferred symbolism, again, autistic folks like to use the neurodiversity symbol, which is an infinity sign. It has rainbows in it. It kind of represents the concept of, just complete individuality and liberty. I guess a really good way to explain this comes from a fictional setting. The Vulcans have a word called Kol Utshan, which means infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And that's actually, I think, the best way to explain neurodiversity as a concept. I think it's pretty, so once again, the Vulcans did something better than we did. And I can't wait for first contact. It couldn't get here fast enough. I would love to be off this planet right now. I'm scared. So again, preferred language is another one. Some autistic people prefer to be referred to as, autistic people. Some will say they prefer to be referred to as people with autism. The best thing to do is ask the person. Just like you want to make sure you get someone's pronouns right so you don't misgender them. It's the same kind of idea. Just say, hey, what language do you prefer? Overall, the autistic community usually says they prefer autistic rather than, but some people are okay with people with autism, but it's a good thing to ask. And if you speak up, make sure you're safe. Obviously, this is very much like coming out. Coming out as autistic is kind of like coming out as LGBTQIA+. Because, it's dangerous. You're telling people something very personal about your identity. And if you're telling the wrong people, they can use that against you. They can harm you, they can be terrible about it. So please, please, please make sure that you're safe and you can safely speak up about things, because I really don't want to see any of you get hurt doing this. It would be very upsetting. So if you're not autistic, which I assume some of you in here are not, how can you help the autistic people you know? So this is the big one. Please listen to them. They have a lot to say. And even if it's not, even if they're not saying it to you verbally, they're still going to find a way to say it to you via body language or stims or reactions to things, or some of them will use a typing interface. Some people talk by moving their finger around on a pad. There's so many different ways to talk that don't require you to actually use your tongue and make sounds come out of your mouth. So definitely find a way to listen to your friends. So if an autistic person is telling you that these things are harmful, please believe them. A type of therapy, there are certain therapies that a lot of autistic people have said actually have traumatized them or have forced them into an attitude of compliance, which sets them up for things like abuse, sexual assault, etc. So if autistic people tell you that a type of therapy really hurt them, might be worth listening to. Some organizations have actually very deeply hurt us, called us a burden, called us this tragic thing that divides families. So if an autistic person doesn't like an organization, there's probably a good reason, and definitely worth listening to them on that. Another big one, a societal expectation that non-autistic people can do seamlessly. Eye contact, a big one. If you haven't noticed, I don't think I've looked at any single one of you in the eyes once today. And if I look like I am, I'm actually looking at your nose or your mouth, which is a really good trick to convince people that you're making eye contact with them when you're not. Look at their nose or their mouth, and you can still, In my case, it's that it's harder for me to form words in my head when I'm making eye contact with the person. And if I want to have a conversation, it's easier for me to not look at them while I'm having it. So if you see me like drawing or something while I'm talking to somebody, I'm not like ignoring them. It's actually makes it easier for me to process what they're saying to me. Again, preferred language. A lot of autistic people prefer autistic people over people with autism. They've done numerous studies and polls on this. You could probably Google it and find one very easily. A lot of us say we don't have autism because we are autism. The main protest that most people have against people with autism is that it sounds kind of like something like people with cancer, that it's like a condition that we have just acquired and that can be removed from us, and it can't. So it's we're saying autistic people is kind of like saying gay people, in that it's part of your identity. So I think almost every autistic person who's presented has talked about this, but functioning labels, autistic folks don't really like them. They're often used to deny support and agency. So this is the big statement that a lot of us use in the community is high functioning is used to deny support, and low functioning is used to deny agency. An oversimplification, but nonetheless a very important thing. Functioning labels don't effectively describe the challenges that we face as people. So if I describe myself, I have a master's degree, undergrad degree in history with a minor in Civil War era studies from Gettysburg College. My master's degree is in library science with an archival studies focus. I work in a public library as a local history librarian. I make almost $51,000 a year now, which is incredible. I've convinced them for an entire year that I'm competent. And and it's like I'm moving out in July finally. I have the income to do that. I'm gonna have a roommate. I'll be living in Hoboken with and another human. And if you look at all of these things, and I have friends. I do things. I go to anime conventions because I'm a big nerd. I have what seems like on the outside a quote unquote normal life. So people would probably label me high functioning. That said, at least until I went to college, my mom had to remind me to wash my hair, because I felt like it was a waste of time that I could be putting into other things like my studies or whatever I was researching at the moment. Or I'm not very good in social situations. I'm really bad at talking to boys. That's a great, which I'll get into a little bit later. So I have a lot of issues that are just, that would make me sound low functioning, quote unquote. So it's definitely worth keeping that in mind, that I may not, that functioning labels can fluctuate on any given day. Some days I'll seem perfectly competent and able to exist in society, and other days I'll barely be able to get out of bed and drag myself to work, and that's going to be a lot easier when work is 2 blocks away instead of an hour-long drive. But you'll notice that it fluctuates. So it's not really a good term to use. This is a big one. If something's caused us trauma, it's very important to believe us. So I mentioned that I'm not good at talking to boys. I have a reason. I grew up in an upper middle class suburb of New York City called Ridgewood. And Ridgewood is a town filled with rich white kids, and now increasingly a substantial East Asian population, interestingly enough. It's good. I get great food out of that. Because I love East Asian food, specifically a lot of Japanese food. I really like ramen. It's big. So I grew up in this very, at the time I was growing up, it was a mostly white community. It was very homogenous. They were all pretty wealthy kids, very fashionable, and I moved there at the age of about 5 from a working class community, very ironically called Woodbridge, which is the same county as Ridgewood in New Jersey. They're both in Bergen County. Woodbridge has a hyphen, that's how you can. The culture was just not for me. I did not fit into that culture at all. I was not concerned with appearance. I was not concerned with following social norms. I was not concerned with really, what I guess wealthy white suburban kids are supposed to be concerned with. It wasn't really my thing. I was much more interested in things like dinosaurs and astronomy, and eventually the two major loves of my life, baseball and comedy. People just, went off on me. I was made fun of pretty much from kindergarten up through the day I graduated high school by various people. Most of my bullies, especially as I got older, were boys. And they would frequently tell me that I was unattractive, that I was ugly, that I was worthless, that no one would ever want to be around me. And I'm now 30 and I've never been on a date because I still have a fight or flight response around boys my own age. And it's because of my childhood bullies. I know it's been something I've been working on the past few years. My roommate who's moving in says she's gonna help me talk to people, so I have like a backup, so it'll make it a little easier. But it's something it's a very serious trauma that I have from bullying. Autistic people, I think I mentioned it later in here, we experience trauma more intensely. And so something that might not be traumatizing to one person can be very traumatizing to us. All right, so let's get back to that non-autistic support. Please share our voices, not just in April, because I know April is like Autism Month, but please just keep sharing our stuff throughout the year. It's not, I don't stop drawing, for 11 months. I'm drawing all 12 months of the year, and I appreciate when people share my art all 12 months of the year. Likewise with my blog posts, AGI streams once a month on the last weekend of the month, and, so we're doing this stuff year round. So please keep sharing our voices year round. It really helps with the advocacy. Call out ableism in your life. If you see a friend of yours use the R word, please shut them down. That is a really, really bad word now. We don't, it's called the euphemism. There's something called the euphemism treadmill. In the past, that was considered a medical term. No, but when something starts getting used as a slur instead of a medical term, they have to move on to the next term. The current term, of course, is intellectual disability, and nobody's using the R word in the medical context anymore because middle schoolers think it's a great way to say, you're stupid. So if you hear a middle schooler use it in that context, call them out, please. Kids are actually pretty receptive if you tell them about their language. Adults a little less so. So if you can start them early, it's pretty great. Adults are going to be more like, well, I used it, so what's wrong with it? No, you know what, you're wrong, shut up. But kids will be like, oh, I'm sorry, and they'll correct themselves. So start them young with that. If a disabled person's with you, make sure their voice is central to the discussion because they probably know a little better because it's their life. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a concept called intersectionality. So in 1989, a black feminist scholar named Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality. And so basically what it means is, I know that people on the internet use it wrong a lot. They'll use it as like a byword to mean, oh, diversity, we have people of different races and types. But that's not truly what intersectionality refers to. It's actually that some people's experiences are going to be different than yours due to overlaps in identity. Prejudices people face are going to vary and intersect at different points. So, for example, I benefit societally from being a white woman. I benefit that I'm white. but being a woman is a knock against me because I live in a patriarchal society. So my intersection of identity is I am white, I am female, I am cisgender, I am straight, and I'm autistic. So all of those things combine, and at that intersection is my personal experience as a human being. Because of these issues, all of the prejudices in society, it's harder for women and non-white people and non-binary folks to receive a diagnosis. Racism and sexism obviously play a role, and as well as the perception that autism is the white boy disease, which it is none of those things. It is not just for white people, it's not just for boys, and it's not a disease. So, if your child's autistic, what can you do? So you could be like totally rad like your parents and be just amazing and supportive and awesome. This line I left in from when they came to see me, and I wanted to brag about them in front of a big crowd, and I bragged about my parents to a total of 2 people, but whatever. My parents have been amazing. They are very supportive. My house has always been a very accepting place for anybody to come, and my parents' support is why I'm, up here right now and not, living in a box or something. They absolutely believed in me. They allowed me to explore myself and who I was and all of these things. They were just incredible, and I can't thank them enough. They are not here today because they are with my brother, who is graduating with his master's in architecture on Monday, and he's getting some kind of academic award, like literally at the same time I'm doing this speech. So they're over there in Brooklyn right now. But yay, Tom, good job. I'm very proud of you. I'm a very proud big sister. Good job, Tom. So big one, allow your child to be autistic first and foremost. They're not going to grow out of that. Let them stim, please. Let them stim. My stims are pretty quiet. I tend to play things or rock my heels a little bit. Some people are going to have more obvious stims, like flapping is the famous one. But just as long as it's, they're not hurting themselves, you can let them stim and just kind of, it's a harmful thing to suppress it because it can actually cause psychological issues later on. Again, teaching social skills is good. Teaching compliance is not good because, there's this book called 1984 by George Orwell, and that tells us why that's bad. Let your kid be a free thinker. Let your kids make their own choices. Let them know that if something doesn't feel right, they have the right to say no. Some therapies teach you that you can't say no when you're uncomfortable, and as I've said, that leads to sexual assault, that leads to abuse, that leads to all sorts of things. But teaching social skills, that's absolutely great. If you can do social skills training, that's awesome. I wasn't diagnosed till age 20, but I would have loved the social skills class because I didn't really have the wherewithal to kind of take care of myself in middle and high school. Somehow people did become my friend. It was through Anime Club, I think. But, I didn't really have the social skills to kind of keep up with and navigate that world at the time. The only reason that I can talk to you now like this is because I worked as a tour guide for a couple of years at a historic site when I was in grad school, and that's where I learned my public speaking skills. Please don't try the dangerous quote-unquote cures. Some people will try to do things like feed their autistic children bleach, and that is really scary and in some cases kills the kid. Please don't do that. Please don't go into that. It's one thing if you're taking herbal supplements to help various things like that. If it's a natural thing from the earth and it's good for you, it probably won't hurt. If you're gonna have your child swallow like a Tide Pod, that's probably gonna kill your kid. Please don't do that. And also, this is a big one, don't overshare on social media. This goes for all parents, anyone who has a child, anyone who has a human child. I will never get tired of photos of your cat. Please keep posting pictures of your cat. Seriously, I am constantly posting pictures of Murphy. But when it comes to a human child who has the agency and will grow up and will possibly have a social media account in the future, if I found out that my parents were posting all these things about me as a kid, I'd be mortified, especially when I hit middle school and I had to kind of have a social reputation. I'd be very embarrassed if my parents were posting about my autistic meltdowns or my toilet training or things like that. Because that's the thing, when you look at these blogs, a lot of the time they don't get their kids' permission, they just post stuff. That's not right. And that actually is a violation of the child's privacy. So please don't be that parent. Also, really, I'm going to be honest, your child may be cute, but nobody wants to see 20 pictures in a row of your child. They are gonna get sick of it. They're gonna like hide you on social media so they don't have to see it.
What if we put cat ears?
That might be acceptable. I mean, there are things there are filters out there too that do these things for you. There's a filter that actually will turn every photo of Donald Trump into a cat. So you don't have to. So like if he's in an article and you've been like seeing him makes you anxious, it'll turn the picture into a picture of a cute cat. So you don't have to. So like because seeing his face can remind people of like stressful things, but it turns into a cat. And then you're like, okay, now I can read the article because it's a cat and I don't have to like feel stressed. Yeah, an orange. Okay, but see, orange cats are the best. They're like so mellow and sweet. I love orange cats. I've had some amazing orange cats. I can't say the same for orange humans, but orange cats are just. So I guess last bit here is don't make your child's autism about you. These are known as like autism martyr parents. And sometimes they'll write the phrase like there's a difference between an autism mom and an autism mom TM. These are the people who make the kids to make their autistic kids struggles and trials and trepidations of living about them. And I'm such a martyr, I'm suffering. Like, well, first off, the Catholic Church isn't going to declare you a martyr, so shut up. I was raised Catholic, and that's not how you get sainthood. You usually have to perform a miracle, not like be an obnoxious parent who's using their child to get like social media brownie points. I think 2 miracles, right? Yeah. I mean, it would be one. You get 1 miracle if you shut up. That'd be great. That's 1 down. But these people, they will make their kids' autism and about them instead of centering their child's needs and supports in the discussion. And they shout over their kids' own voice, and they're the ones who are going to be the ones who, if you're a self-advocate, you're going to run into them and be like, you're not like my child makes me like a pariah in the community, and it's really bad. And it's like, no, it's not about you, it's about your kid. Like, and I would love to help your kid, but if you're going to just keep talking like that, it's going to, kind of push me away from you. And we need to work together here. So tell me tell me about your kid. What is your kid like? What are their needs, their wants, their desires? How can we achieve that? Don't make it about you. Make it about, always center your kid in the discussion, because it's really their voice that matters. If they're too little to talk, then you can help them communicate until they can do it on their own. Big one, Andrew Wakefield is a fraud. Please vaccinate your children. Andrew Wakefield is a scientist. He was a doctor, but he's not anymore because he got disbarred for this. He published a study in a very, very well-established, very reputable British medical journal called The Lancet. And in that study, he claimed that the MMR vaccine caused autism in children. The problem was his case methodology and his methodology and everything was really flawed. He maybe only used like 20 children or something. Oh, wow. And it's been disproven by much larger studies numerous times, to the point where The Lancet actually has retracted his article. And he has lost his medical license, so he is no longer Dr. Wakefield, he's just Wakefield. So please, so yeah, as I said, Wakefield's study in The Lancet has been disproven numerous times. I can totally find you some sources on that if you want. I'm a librarian, I have lots of access to like academic articles and stuff through work. So like if you need access, if you want something from like a medical journal, I probably have a good shot of being able to get it for you. Herd immunity is also really important. So I have an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which means that my thyroid has like some nodules on it, and it makes me like vaguely narcoleptic. No, not really, but it slows down my metabolism. You put on weight. You're always cold. You have your hair can thin, fall out. I mean, side note, my eyebrows have never looked better because of this, but they were thicker. Now I don't have to do anything. I don't even have to pluck them. I just have to like rub my hand and it just comes around. Perfect. But that's so, autoimmune diseases exist. I mean, in my case, I can still get vaccines. I'm pretty safe. Mine's just my thyroid is eating itself alive. Or not really eating itself, but my immune system is eating my thyroid. So I have to take like thyroid supplements to make sure I get the right, balance. thyroid hormone in my body. Now, for someone who has, say, lupus or HIV or something like that, they can't get vaccines because they're in a condition, they're in a case where they're immunocompromised, which means they're going to get sick much more easily. You want to be very careful. This also, of course, applies to people who can't get vaccines just because of their age. That includes very small children and the elderly. And so if you have herd immunity by having most of the people vaccinated, it helps protect those people in your community. And so it'll keep them safer. So if you've noticed that there's like insular religious communities and they're having these outbreaks because nobody's vaccinated, that's where herd immunity would have actually been able to help control those little outbreaks because people would have been vaccinated against those diseases. So questions, comments, please tell me I'm funny. So here's where you can contact me. This is my email at Hoboken Library. Buckles stands for something like Bergen County Consortium of Library Services or something or other. Hoboken is actually in Hudson County, New Jersey, but we paid to be a member of Buckles because it's like better. So that's me. That's my Italian last name with like 5,000 vowels in it. And so if you want to email me. I was a dingus and forgot my business cards from work because I was rushing from work to the airport. So that's that. This is my Twitter. I'm on here infrequently, and I think about half my tweets in the past year have been screenshots from me playing Splatoon, but I'm still there. And you can tweet right at me, and I will be very happy to help you with anything. This is my Tumblr, which is where I am a little more often. You'll see me on there posting art and reblogging GIFs of my favorite comedians and crying, or posting pictures of Murphy. This is my blog, aspergersillustrated.blogspot.com. So you can get that on there. I would have put my cell phone number, but I don't answer the phone if it's not a number I have as a contact because I get too many of those spam call things now where they're like, they'll be like, hey, would you like health insurance? And I'll get like 10 of them a day, and I'll be like, no, I don't. Even the public phone at the library now gets those calls. Like people, I'll just pick it up and I'll just slam it back down. I'm like, this isn't a real person. This is a waste of my time. On the reference desk, please do not waste my time. I only have a limited time on this desk to help people. And so here's the Autistic Gaming Initiative's info if you're a big nerd like me. It would help if it would show up. Where is it? Let me on the slide. Okay. So the autistic, we have an email, autisticgaminginitiative@gmail.com. That can be kind of a mouthful. So just, I guess, spell it right once and add it to your contacts and you'll be good. We have a Twitter, Autistic Gamers. That's a little easier to remember. That weird sort of complicated URL is actually the link to our Discord server if you want to join it. Really, all you have to do is just either be autistic or like us and want to support us. And we have a website, autisticgaming.com, which is updated infrequently, but we're working on getting more people involved in the process of that. And I guess I am now open to questions, I think. So, yeah, here, I'll give you a picture of Murphy to look at while we're, so yeah, go ahead and ask me anything, except like my social security number, I won't tell you that. I just signed a lease and I need it. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure, okay, or you can just find me outside and ask me stuff, that's cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, come get me inside.